You boys be quiet down there!
Welcome back. We're covering every Neo Geo game in order, and it's time for NGH number 031, Soccer Brawl, 1991 from SNK. We'll be looking at this game on my MVS cart. Some might be disappointed, but the name Soccer Brawl conjures a different image than what this game is. If you have any doubt, just try Googling Soccer Brawl.
I'm steaming piss drunk and I'm gonna be sick.
Prior to its release, Soccer Brawl had the working title Cybernetic Soccer. As mentioned earlier in this series, the game was actually the third and last developed by Palace, a second-party label for SNK that they set up and then quickly retired. They ended up ditching the Palace name and just released Soccer Brawl as SNK. Was it a coincidence that all the Palace games were futuristic and robot-themed? After fighting games, what is the Neo Geo most famous for? Well, probably Metal Slug. After that, puzzle games? It depends on what part of the world you hail from. At any rate, there are 9 soccer games for Neo Geo. And perhaps surprisingly, the first one was not SNK's flagship soccer series, Super Sidekicks. Instead, our long road to covering all the soccer games on the console begins with futuristic cybernetic soccer game Soccer Brawl. And by the way, yes, in case you don't call it soccer, I am talking about football. Perhaps your level of interest in the sport will influence your enthusiasm for these 9 games.
Halfback passes to the center. Back to the wing. Back to the center. Center holds it. Holds it. Holds it.
Halfback passes to center. Back to wing. Back to center. Center holds it. Holds it. Holds it!
The action takes place in your choice of one of 2 stadiums, SNK Stadium in Osaka or the Superdome in San Francisco.
Long before the Superdome, where the saints of football play.
As for controls, the game only uses 2 buttons. The C and D buttons rarely get any love in these early Neo Geo games. There's a crater where my A button used to be, but the D button is still brand new. While on offense, the A button is your main kick button, and B is pass. On defense, A will do a slide, and B will actually make your character jump in the air. Speaking of the jump button, there's a bug in this game where you can press the B button on the other controller while playing in one-player mode, and this will cause the CPU's players to jump uncontrollably. This can be exploited to win more easily. It's kind of a weird oversight and a shame that it was left in the game. In addition to the slide, while on defense you can also press A and B together to tackle other players. Holding down the A button will fill your power meter. With the meter filled, releasing the button while on offense will perform a power shot, and while on defense it will shoot the other players with your arm cannon. A very drastic way of stopping the opposing players, don't you think? There are no fouls in this game, so be prepared to fight dirty to maintain control of the ball. You'll probably find that you're holding the A button basically all the time in this game, and the CPU even appears to do the same thing. The only issue with this is that you'll find sometimes you need to perform a quick action like an overhead shot, in which case you won't want the meter charged up. Sometimes you have to preemptively let go of the charge button before you get control of your player, so you don't end up accidentally standing and shooting when you really meant to hit the ball. Also, you'll notice the game doesn't have any button to switch which player is under your control. In this game, you're stuck playing whichever player the game decides you should be controlling, usually the player closest to the ball after your current active player goes off screen. This is not ideal, but you get used to it. Compared with traditional soccer, Soccer Brawl has some notable changes. For one thing, the field feels quite tiny. Part of that might be the way the more powerful charged kicks in this game can send the ball clear across the field in an instant. Furthermore, out of bounds works differently. Just outside of the boundary lines are walls that the ball can bounce off of. If the ball bounces off the wall and back onto the field, it is still in play. It only counts as out of bounds if the ball stops somewhere outside the boundary lines without making it back in play. Also, while we're on the subject, can I just say the sound of the ball bouncing off the sides of the field in this game is just perfect. If soccer balls made this sound in real life, I'm pretty sure my brothers and I would have been outside kicking balls against the side of the house every day, all day long. The other obvious thing is your cybernetically enhanced players. The charged shots come in two varieties, power shots and special power shots. Each team has a captain or headmaster, identified by their scarf, and only this headmaster player can perform the charged special shots. The form this shot takes depends on the team you select. The special power shots are a lot like the super moves in Mega Man Soccer. Yes, I'm talking about Mega Man Soccer for Super Nintendo, one of our favorite sports games in the Basement Brothers house growing up, naturally. This aspect of Soccer Brawl is quite like in Mega Man Soccer, because the special power shots will temporarily stun any player it hits, except unlike in Mega Man Soccer, you can't stun the goalkeeper. The counterintuitive thing about these special power shots is that while they have the added benefit of knocking over any players on the field they make contact with, they're actually more likely to be caught by the goalkeeper than standard power shots. Bouncing a fumbled ball off the goalkeeper is going to be your primary method of scoring in this game. Facing off against the computer in one-player mode in this game is, in a word, tough. The two major ways to score in this game both involve performing a quick overhead shot or hitting the ball with your head. The first is after bouncing the ball off the goalkeeper, as I mentioned. At random, the power shots that hit the goalkeeper will sometimes bounce off rather than being caught. These bounces are your chance to slam the ball into the goal. The CPU is very good at doing this, so watch out. The second way the CPU usually scores is after a corner kick. It is very difficult to prevent a goal when the CPU has a corner kick, so obviously you should do your best to avoid giving your opponent corner kicks as much as possible. Corner kicks are of course a great opportunity for you to score as well, so don't let your corner kicks go to waste. When your team gets a corner kick, focus on your player right here and wait for the ball to come to him. You don't actually hit the ball with this player, another player will run in there. Pressing A at exactly the right moment will allow you to smash it into the goal more often than not. With the CPU so good at making these shots, you'll need some strategies to win. For instance, the ball should be kept out of your territory as much as possible, so don't look at firing the ball off across the field and out of bounds as a bad thing. This runs out the clock and helps prevent your opponent from getting in scoring position. Fire these power shots and special shots at your opponent's goal if possible. Once in a blue moon, the goalkeeper will mess up and let one by. Beyond that, this game is going to require some practice. Hitting the ball is all about timing in this game. Perform overhead shots whenever possible. These are done by hitting A at exactly the right moment when the ball is above the player's head. If the ball is too high, press B to jump and block the ball with your body instead. The game won't let you get away with simply spamming the buttons here. You have to wait and press it at just the right moment. Oh, and just to make sure the odds are against you, the way the game handles ties is pretty unforgiving. When time's up and there is no winner, like in other soccer games, the game switches to a penalty shootout, with the view facing the goal. But in this shootout, each team only gets 3 shots, and if the shootout ends in a tie, well, then it's game over. You'll be forced to continue and start the match all over again. I call shenanigans on this. Why not just go to sudden death until there's a winner? Are they afraid it'll just go on forever? The one-player league mode consists of 7 games. With the match time set to the default halftime of 2.5 minutes, the game will take a total of about a half hour to play through if you win every match. By the way, the MVS mode measures the halves in real minutes and seconds, whereas the home mode has a default match time of 45 somethings. Yeah, in AES mode, each tick of the clock is actually 4 seconds, making each half 3 minutes long at the default setting. I'm not sure why they did it this way. Another difference in the AES version is the inclusion of the women in bikinis on this screen whenever a goal is scored. They are oddly missing from the MVS version, and this area of the screen seems empty without them, with the score all the way at the top as if to leave space. Unlike the match time difference mentioned, this omission is actually a difference in the ROM on the MVS cartridge. Setting the MVS cartridge to AES mode in the BIOS will not make the game display the ladies. You must have the AES cartridge. Who knows why they did this, as it's really hard to imagine a 90s arcade audience being squeamish about it. Perhaps the AES version is simply a later revision of the game, whether this was a bug that needed to be corrected or a feature that wasn't finished on time for the MVS release. Or maybe it really was a last-minute deliberate omission for the arcade due to concerns of releasing the game in certain markets. Who knows? In that case, it's a rare instance of censorship in the MVS version for once, instead of the AES version. Soccer Brawl includes halftime shows, which are short, humorous cartoons presented in black and white with the opening having a projector-like strobing effect, perhaps intended to mimic silent films. The music in these segments seems to be somewhat of a sound-alike for Scott Joplin's ragtime piano classic, The Entertainer. Each game in the one-player league mode has its own episode, following a mad scientist who seems to be trying to create a soccer-playing robot. All of these take place in the scientist's lab, except the last three, which are out on the pitch. Personally, I like to think that this is because the robot escapes by trading places with the scientist in the fourth episode. The hapless scientist just never succeeded in making the robot ready for the big leagues, unfortunately. Perhaps all of this explains why all the players in Soccer Brawl appear to be cybernetically enhanced humans, while robot players are nowhere to be found. The opening dates of the two stadiums in this game suggest that this game takes place sometime toward the end of or after the 21st century, and perhaps robot technology just wasn't that far along at this point. It paints a far less optimistic view than the robots shown off in 2020 Super Baseball. Or maybe computers have taken over and enslaved humans. We'll just never know because the game is devoid of almost any story, and unlike in 2020 Super Baseball, we don't even so much as see the audience to give us an idea about what life is like in this reality. There's an audience here on the score screen, but it's more like a generic graphic than any real window into this world. Indeed, it's hard not to compare Soccer Brawl to the other futuristic sports game from Palace, which was issued a production code right before this one. Both games are 46 megs, and yet Soccer Brawl does feel like a lower budget game, doing less with the same amount of memory. The game's graphics are good enough to get the job done, but very cut and dry. There isn't much beyond the basic requirements here. It's as if the cybernetic soccer theme on its own was considered enough to get by. And indeed, perhaps it was. The April 1992 issue of Game Machine listed Soccer Brawl as the 8th most successful arcade game of the month. In 1994, Playmeter magazine listed it among the 60 most popular arcade games of all time. The game received generally positive reviews. And I tend to agree that, yes, in 1991, this would have been compelling enough gameplay and graphics to get players to shell out their hard-earned coins. I wouldn't say the graphics are bigger, badder, better in every sense, compared with the 16-bit home consoles at the time, but overall decently competent and attractive for 1991. SNK regular Yasumasa Yamada, who often goes by the name Yamapi, did the music here. This time he was credited as Wolfgang Amadeus Yamada, and he was joined by, Dormitory Room 102. Okay. There are 4 main BGMs that get played during gameplay. With 7 total matches in one-player league mode, it means that 3 of the tracks get reused, with a dedicated track for the final game. At least in Soccer Brawl, you get music during gameplay, which is more than can be said for most of the games in the Super Sidekick series, which go for realism with their crowd sounds, rather than background music. There's not a lot of variety to the music in this game, but it is generally catchy, with that stock SNK rock sound that Neo Geo fans are accustomed to. But how about this little ditty that plays before each match? If you pause the game here, you can hear more of it than you normally would. With it being an earlier game, the music seems to lean a little bit more on the FM sounds than most. The main melodies tend to be FM, while samples are used for the guitar and percussion accompaniment. As a reminder, FM sound is the sound that the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive and many late 80s, early 90s arcade games are known for. The Neo Geo's YM2610 synthesizer has 4 of these FM sound channels, with 780 PCM channels, which are dedicated to playing sampled recordings. These samples are what make up the main instruments in most Neo Geo games, especially the later titles. So games that highlight the FM sound, like ADK's early Neo Geo offerings, can be a nice change of pace, although they can feel more dated. As usual, like in most early 90s SNK offerings, Michael Beard supplies the English-speaking voice on the title screen and during gameplay.
Dr. Brawl!
If I had to guess, there's a very strong possibility that the robotic announcer between and during gameplay is also Mr. Beard, with a voice effect applied.
Spain versus Brazil. Kickoff. Throw in.
For some reason, some voices have a robot effect, while others are a natural human voice.
Overhead. Diving head.
Michael Beard seemed to be SNK's go-to native English-speaking voice at the time. I wouldn't be surprised if the robotic announcer in 2020 Super Baseball is also Michael Beard, with a different voice effect applied. The Neo Geo CD version of Soccer Brawl is a basic port with no surprises. The whole game loads up in 48 seconds on a single-speed system, and 27 seconds on a CDZ. For a game of this vintage, it's no surprise that there's no arranged CD soundtrack. The music is just recordings of the cartridge version. Unlike in a lot of CD releases, this game never pauses to wait for the drive to access the music tracks. Instead, the game simply proceeds, and the music just starts late sometimes.
Kickoff.
I definitely prefer when Neo Geo CD games do it this way, because there's less waiting around. And by the way, it looks like they used the MVS version without the ladies on this score screen for the CD version. So at any rate, you can't really go wrong here with the CD version. We've certainly got a lot more soccer games ahead of us in this series, with 8 more to go. But it's interesting that the first one is a sci-fi futuristic themed sports title, while the remaining 8 all fall somewhere on the more realistic side. Soccer Brawl offers a nice change of pace from those other offerings on the Neo Geo, with its fast-paced frenzy of fall-free, cybernetically enhanced power shots, even though scoring goals in this one can be trickier. Soccer Brawl is surprisingly one of the only futuristic soccer video game offerings out there, so it is already noteworthy for that alone. Soccer Brawl is certainly not one of the best known fan favorites among the Neo Geo library, with no ports to other consoles, unlike 2020 Super Baseball, but it acquits itself well enough with decent challenge, graphics, gameplay, and music. With its 2-button gameplay, Soccer Brawl is quite simple, and indeed nothing special, but also nothing bad either. Thank you for watching Neo Geo Generation. Next time on the series, we'll be looking at NGH-032, Robo Army. So, robots again? So please like and share this video to help our channel grow, and I'll see you next time. This is Neo Alec signing off.